Konbanwa, Planeswalkers. You're listening to Radio Kyoto, coming to you from our studios residing on the wicked hot side of the multiverse this evening. And this week, we're closing up our look at Ravnica Allegiance, diving into the world, taking a look at it from the limited lens. If you haven't seen the previous videos, go take a look back. We've been printing them out all week long. We're breaking up the set review by guild and color, and we're closing it out here with Simic and Blue. First, we're going to take a look at the Simic uncommons, then their commons, and then we'll be on to Blue with their uncommons, and lastly, the Blue commons. But before we can take a look at the cards and rate them, we have to take a look at our rating scale. So first, the biggest rating we get is for a bomb. That's a 5. Very few bombs that we'll see in the uncommon and common realm. Those are mostly reserved for rare and can win the game on their own. 4s are influencers. Those you take a look at those coming around to you in a draft and saying maybe that color's open. You take a look at them in your sealed pool, and those are where you should be leaning to build your deck. They are strong and pull you in that direction. Playables, this is the majority of what your deck's made of. You're looking to get these on the wheel if you're in a draft, because that signifies that it's open and you're strengthening your deck. And 2s, those are fringe playables. Those are mostly making up your 21st, 22nd, 23rd cards in your deck, and you're looking to replace those in pack 3 of your draft. The last one is 1, and that's unplayables. Those are janky rares, sometimes just some real narrow commons. So let's dive in to Simic. We have Incubation and Incongruity. Incubation is hybrid mana, 1 green or 1 blue, so 1 total mana for a sorcery. Look at the top 5 cards of your library, pick, reveal a creature card from it, put that in your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. So a dig card allows you to get a creature. It's good late, okay early. Incongruity, the other side of it, you can cast as at instant speed for 1 generic mana, 1 green mana, 1 blue mana, 3 total mana. Exile target creature. That creature's controller gets a 3/3 frog lizard token. So I like this side as well. Probably more so late. Take care of some type of bomb on the opponent's side. You bring it down to a 3/3. So that's good in Gruul, where you can just run over top of it, so worth splashing into that. Also good in just Simic, where you maybe can adapt some of your creatures larger to that 3/3, give you an advantageous attack. And solid in Azorius, where you're looking to fly over them. Note, it won't be good in all Azorius decks, so make sure you're building your deck around the flying version to be able to do so. With that, I think this is a 3.5. Next up, we've got the Combine Guild Mage. 1 green, 1 blue, 2 total mana for a 2/2, like all the guild mages. 1 generic mana and a green, and you tap it, and each creature you control entering the battlefield this turn enters with an additional +1/+1 counter. So a bit of a boost. I can't say I'm a big fan of that modal. It's kind of like just giving something a riot, and you don't get to pick the haste side of it. The other side is where I would much rather focus, and that's 1 generic mana, 1 blue. Move a +1/+1 counter from target creature you control to another target creature you control. So this allows you to really open up your adapt modal. You can take a +1/+1 counter off those creatures, put them onto other creatures that can't adapt or maybe have flying, and it allows you to maybe readapt that creature. So I like this. I'd even splash this in Azorius, splash this well in Gruul. There aren't very many ways in which you can move counters, and it really opens up the game for you. So keep an eye on that and this little tricky guy. I don't like the first ability, but I like the second, so we'll give him a 3.5. I like moving the counters. Here you have the Gyre Engineer. So 1 generic mana, 1 green, 1 blue for 1/1. You tap it and adds 2 mana, 1 green and 1 blue to your mana pool. So you can't do this because he comes in with Summoning Sickness on the first turn. But after that, he's good to go and he's good ramp. But I do not like that he is 1 toughness. That makes him pretty weak, pretty susceptible to any type of removal, and I don't like that investment you have to make with 3 mana for it. So, plus, I don't know if you really need to ramp that much. I think you can build your deck around some creatures, some blockers, and really just naturally build up. So I don't think you're really trying to ramp out all that often. We'll give him a 2.5. Next up, we got a monster here, Frilled Mystic. This is the CCDD card in Simic. 2 green, 2 blue, so 4 total mana for a 3/2 flash. When he enters the battlefield, you may counter target spell. This pretty much guarantees a 2-for-1. You get to pick, for the most part, what the 2-for-1 is going to be. Each time you're at least picking the spell, and then you can, if he's using for blocking, you get to pick the attacker that comes in. So kind of limited, they have to be attacking for you to do that, but he's also just a 3/2 body. I personally think this is the best. I don't want to say he's the best. He's up there with the Gruul guy as far as being number 1, number 2. But those guys I think are easily at the top of the mill, and he's easily the best uncommon in Simic. You see him and you want to lean Simic, so 4.0 for him, especially if you see him, picks 3, 4, 5. He's your guy. No one's drafting Simic. Shark to Crab, so 2 generic mana, 1 green, 1 blue, for a 4/4. So solid there, just 4 mana for a 4/4. He can adapt. You can get a +1/+1 counter on, make him 5/5. So you tap 2, tap a green, tap a blue, and they'll adapt. So that moving the counters around, this is a great target to move a counter from, because you could just continue to adapt. We also saw the Gruul card that remove a +1/+1 counter from it, and when you tap it, and you can shoot 2 damage over. This is another great target for removing a +1/+1 counter. Plus, whenever you move this +1/+1, whenever he gets a +1/+1 counter on him, you tap target creature and opponent control. So added bonus for being able to play with this guy. I love the synergy, and with that, this guy is a 4.0. Just solid creature, but real synergistic within the set. Last of the uncommons here for Simic, Galloping Lizrog. So 3 generic mana, 1 green, 1 blue for a 3/3, so not a great rate. He's got Trample though, and when he enters the battlefield, you may remove any number of +1/+1 counters from among creatures you control. If you do, put twice that many +1/+1 counters on this lizard. So you're kind of getting an upgrade on those counters, but you can pay a hefty cost for this, because you're putting a lot of eggs in that one basket. Hopefully, maybe you're pulling those +1/+1 counters off of creatures you've already adapted. He's a much later play, that means, but he can be a real big payoff. But it kind of depends on what deck you're going against. If they got removal and can clamp this guy down, it really hurts. So I'm going to put him at a 3.0. You really only want to be in Simic and maybe see this guy a bit later and say, okay, I'm not flush on 5 drops. This is kind of one of the cards I can pick up. Take a look at the commons. Applied Biomancy. 1 green and 1 blue, 2 total mana. Choose one or both. You'll want to choose both when you can. Play this card. Target creature gets +1/+1 till end of turn. Return target creature to owner's hand. So this is when you want to be playing this as a trick, as a 2-for-1, where you are returning one of their creatures to your hand, maybe when they look to double block it and you steamroll over them. Maybe another creature's getting +1/+1 and giving you an advantageous attack or block. So this is a good, at least 1.5-for-1 that you're really slowing them down and getting rid of something with that +1/+1 move. And as such, you want to play this guy. He's a 3.5. Next, we have Growth Spiral. Also 1 green, 1 blue, 2 total mana. Instant speed. Draw a card. You may play a land from your hand onto the battlefield. So this is solid. You really want this early. This is pretty stinky late. It kind of makes it pretty narrow. It's a spell. I think you want to be playing creatures, especially in this color pairing. So with that, this card is probably more standard viable, and that's a 2.0 for us. Aeromunculus. So 1 generic mana, 1 green mana, 1 blue mana, 3 total mana for a 2/3 flying. solid right there. Play that card every time. Plus, he's got Adapt. Adapt for 1. All you got to do is pay 2 generic mana, 1 green and 1 blue. You put a +1/+1 counter on him. So you made this guy a 3/4, investing mana over turn 3 and 4. That is awesome. You want as many of these guys as you can. They are Stonewall in the air. 2/3 is the going rate for what is common and uncommon in the air here. You make this guy even bigger than that, he becomes the owner of the skies at that time. He's a 4.0. You want these guys, you see him, even if you're already in Simic, take more. Scuttlegator. So 4 generic mana and then hybrid mana. So 1 green or blue, and then another green or blue. So 6 total mana. 2 of it has to either be red, blue, pairing. You get a 6/6 defender. Okay, 6/6 is good, but defender, not that great. You can adapt 3 for him. You could turn him into a 9/9, but you gotta pay 6 generic mana and 2 hybrid red-blue mana as well. Or sorry, green-blue mana, because this is Simic. So 8 total mana to adapt 3. Turn him into a 9/9, and as long as this creature has +1/+1 counter on it, he could attack as though he doesn't have defender. So I like that. I think you got to cheat another way to get +1/+1 counters on them, whether that's moving the counters or spells that put the +1/+1 counters on them that they have it. That's solid. He's going to stop everything, but he's pretty expensive. I think this guy is just filler in your Simic deck. I think he's much better in Azorius, where you're trying to play slower. And Gruul, I think you have better options. Terramander. So for 1 generic mana, we're entering right into the blues here. So blue and commons here. One blue mana for a 1/1 flying. So okay, that's okay. And then you could adapt 7 generic mana, 1 blue, and this guy will adapt for 4. So you turn him into a 5/5. That's a lot to adapt for, so it says this ability costs 1 less generic mana to activate for each instant and sorcery in your graveyard. So that's not bad. He's probably more in like a spells deck. I know he has adapt and it's like Simic. That I think this leans a little bit more towards Azorius, since he's just blue. So I think he's solid there. But you do need the spells. And that 1 toughness is going to be, I think, easy to deal with in the sky with so much of the afterlife that'll be out there. So with that, this guy gets a 2.5. Next uncommon, Wall of Thoughts. 1 generic mana, 1 blue mana for a 0/4 wall defender. When it enters the battlefield, target player puts top 4 cards of their library into their graveyard. So it mills. It's a blocker against aggro. Otherwise, it kind of stinks at its value face. I don't think the mill's not going to get there this set. So this is a 2.0. Essence Capture. 2 blue for an instant. Counter target creature spell. Put a +1/+1 counter on up to 1 target creature you control. So alright, just in general, 2 mana to counter a creature spell, already playable. That's good. You can put a +1/+1 counter on another creature you control. We've already seen some that want those +1/+1 counters on them. Gives them that added value, like that Scuttlegator. This can help cheat him in, make him a 7/7 able to attack creature. So this is decent early. 2 blue mana is kind of tough to do on turn 2, but it's going to be great on 3 and 4 when your opponent's casting its main creature spells it wants to get out of hand. But you also got to have a creature on the board to make it completely viable for all its value. So 3.5, solid, but a little bit more conditional, get all of its value. Gateway Sneak, 2 generic mana, 1 blue for a 1/3. When a gate enters the battlefield under your control, this creature cannot be blocked. Whenever it attacks and deals combat damage, draw a card. So fine, 1/3 for 3 mana, not great. Probably only good in the gates deck where you can not even reliably draw a card every turn, but you get some value off of it. So 2.5. Code of Constraint, 2 generic mana and 1 blue for an instant. Target creature gets -4/-0 until end of turn. Draw a card. Addendum, so you can also cast this during your main phase, and if you do, tap a creature, and it doesn't untap during its controller's next untap step. So I like this probably better in like the modal main phase period. Allows you to get in for an attack where you maybe necessarily couldn't before, potentially even on the next turn depending on what they play, and it allows you to draw a card. So I like the versatility. It's going to be pretty hard to use this as a trick in the first mode, leaving 3 mana open on your turn. Probably depends on how controlling you are, the counter spells you have in your deck, and it means you got to have a creature with enough power to take out something else and its toughness, and then you just knock the opponent's creatures down on their power, so your creature still survives. So decent modality. I like the second addendum version better, so keep an eye on playing that in your. I'd even play this in your Simic decks. I know it's the Azorius type card, but be playing this in your Simics and use it to tap down the creatures, and you get in a good, maybe adapted creature. Turn some attacks in your favor. Eyes Everywhere. This is an enchantment for 2 mana, 2 generic mana and a blue, so 3 total mana. At the beginning of your upkeep, scry 1. Boom. Period. Like it. Not great for 3 mana, but that's just a great effect, being able to filter through your card draw. You can also pay 5 and a green and exchange control of this Eyes Everywhere for a non-land permanent. So obviously someone else controls. You do that at time of sorcery. Okay, that's fine. Just a good mind control to use later. If your opponent's not playing blue, they have nothing to do about it. I like the head games this plays, but I think it's going to be just solid doing the scry 1. So with that, 3.5. Skatewing Spy. This is 3 generic mana and 1 blue for a 2/3. Not the greatest rate, but we'll just say each creature you control with a +1/+1 counter on it has flying. That's phenomenal. This takes all of your adapted creatures and throws them in the air. It takes all of your Gruul creatures that had Riot and chose the +1/+1 counter and made all those Gruul creatures flyer. I love this in Gruul. Not maybe the greatest in Azorius, but better in Gruul for that reason if you're looking to splash on in. Has Adapt even. You get Adapt 2 on top of this. 5 generic mana and 1 blue, and you turn this into a 4/5. So I like it. I think this is the best blue uncommon in the set, and with that, it gets a 4.0. Next up, we got the Windstorm Drake, 4 generic mana and a blue, for a 3/3 flyer. All right, so this is your 3/3 flyer for 4/5. That's uncommon in blue. And in the flying deck, it's great because other creatures you control get +1/+0. So if you're blue-white flying, if you are splashing into black to get the Afterlife, this is where you want to be. This is a solid card for that. That is quite a powerful effect. You want to be going wide with flyers in this, and this is a 4.0. Swirling Torrent, 5 generic mana and a blue for sorcery. Choose one or both. You're going to want to choose both. It's not worth playing this card if you can't choose both, especially this one. Paying 6 mana to put target creature on top of owner's library, return target creature to its owner's hand. You can only do this at sorcery speed, so kind of keep note. Huge mana cost, but it's also a huge momentum shift. I mean, like that takes you being on the back heel and putting yourself on front foot with that. Kind of turns the lever if you were right on the edge to right in the edge the other direction. So with that, this is a 3.0. All right, hitting off the commons. We got the Fairy Duelist, 1 generic mana, 1 blue. For 1/2 flying, also has flash, so it can enter on the opponent's turn. Whenever the duelist enters the battlefield, target creature an opponent controls gets -2, -0 until end of turn. So good little trick. I use this guy to ping down a 3/1 or 2/1, something like that flyer, because it can get in. And, it's a good trick late, even with that as well, and it's a flyer. So you can kind of get in for the damage there. So I like this in your Azorius decks probably more so, but it'll work in Simic as well. That gets a 3.0. Persistent Petitioners. if this is 1 generic mana, 1 blue for a 1/3, it's pretty much your mill outlet with this. I'm not going to go through reading it because you don't want to play it. This is a 1.0. Sage's Row Savant, 1 generic mana for 1 blue. For 2/1, when it enters the battlefield, scry 2. Like the scry 2, wish it had 2 toughness, but the 2 power, if it's sitting back on blockers, you could make this an advantage and really set this up. So probably better in your more Azorius decks, and as such, a little bit more narrow, and it's a 2.5. Quench is 1 generic mana, 1 blue mana, counter target spell unless its controller plays 2. So this is good early. Counter their early drop, you get the momentum, kind of keep them on their back heel, keep things even. Good medium game, not so great late when they got all the mana in the world that they need, and this doesn't necessarily matter. So we're going to have this also at a 2.5. Shimmer of Possibility is 1 generic mana, 1 blue. For sorcery, look at the top 4 cards of your library, put 1 of them in your hand, put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. So decent dig, but it kind of stinks that it's a sorcery. It's much better in a spells deck, so kind of keep that in mind, something where spells a little bit matter. So this is probably going to be, just your 21st, 22nd, 23rd type card, and that means it's a 2.5. Slimebind is 1 generic mana, 1 blue mana, flash, enchantment, enchanted creature, it's an aura. Enchanted creature gets -4/-0. So this is kind of turning something just into a defender. I mean, they could still attack, but it's taking their power down so much where it doesn't make it viable for them to attack. Just turns whatever creature into like some dumb blocker that'll bounce, kind of bump off of creatures you attack with. Note, this is especially good against Death Touch, so I like that. Given that, we're going to give this a 3.0. Decent removal at common for blue. Not the best. Coral Commando, 2 generic mana and a blue for a 3/2. It kind of fails just the vanilla test. Other guilds where you can just, you're getting a 3/3 for 3. Blue, you could do better. You probably want to be flying. Simic, you can do better than this too. 2.0. Senate Courier. All right, this is what we're talking about at 2 generic mana and a blue. 3 total mana. For 1/4 flying, this is much more what you want to be doing in Azorius, the flyers. Or if you just want to set up a brick wall a bit and start to build up and gain control later. It has the activated ability, 1 and a blue, so 2 total mana there, and it gains vigilance to end a turn. But, I mean, what you're paying 2 mana to attack for 1 in the air, you can find better things to do with your mana. I don't even look at that. And it's a 3.0. You'll play this especially great in your flyer stack and controlling decks. Next up, we got Arrester's Automation. You got 2 generic mana and a blue for an instant. Return target creature to its owner's hand. Alright, good. Bounce is going to be good, especially with all the +1/+1 counters out there. And also the enchantments that will go onto your creatures and lock them down. Don't mistake that. Addendum. You can also cast this spell during your main phase and draw a card. That's especially good when you want to be playing this on one of your own creatures. Return that creature to hand, draw a card that was maybe locked down because of an enchantment on it. I think this is great value. I think this is the second best blue common out there. It's a spell, interacts with creatures on the board. Their creatures, gives you card draw. Just great value. 3.5. Clear the Mind, 2 generic mana for 1 blue. Target player shuffles their library into their graveyard, draw a card. This kind of stinks. This pretty much should just say draw a card. It's going to elongate some type of game. You don't need this spell in your deck, and it's a 1.0. Thought Collapse. 1 generic mana and 2 blue mana, 3 total mana, counter target spell. Its controller puts the top 3 cards of their library into their graveyard. So mill 3, I mean, just looking at this, it's just a counter spell. Hard counter for 3. It's okay. You got to be in that controlling deck, and you got to be Azorius, I think, to be even wanting to play this. Hard counter a spell 2.5. Skittering Eel is 3 generic mana, 1 blue for 3/3. Sorry, that's good value. But it has adapt as well, which kind of takes that, okay to decent value up to, above rate. Adapt 2 and a blue, and you can adapt 2. You make it into a 5/5. So over 2 turns, you're sinking your mana, you get a 5/5. I think this is the third best common, and with that, it's a 3.5. You'll play this in Azorius. You'll play this in Simic. Probably not worth splashing in the other colors, but you could. Chillbringer. 4 generic mana, 1 blue for a 3/3 flyer. When Chillbringer enters the battlefield, tap target creature and opponent controls. That creature does not untap during its controller's next untap step. This is awesome. This is your 5 mana 3/3 flyer. Just like we had the uncommon one, here's the common one. Awesome in the flying decks. Awesome outside of the flying decks. You'll play this in Simic, you'll play this in Azorius. I would splash this if I was white-black. I would splash this if I was Gruul. This is the #1 blue common. It leaves you pretty open. Picking it early, 4.0. I like this card a lot. Homunculus is 4 generic mana, 4 blue for a 2/5 hexproof. That's a lot of mana for a 2/5. The hexproof, I mean, it already has 5 toughness, so I don't know who's really wasting a counter spell, or not counter spell, but just, some type of spell to take this guy down when he's got just 2 toughness, 5 toughness, but just 2 power. I don't think people will care enough to even want to bring this guy down anyway. At 2/5, 2/5's, really only something you're trying to tear down if it's advantageous towards your attacking board, but I think there's much better ways around this guy, and he's just a 2.0. I think Flyer's going to get up and over him. Gruul's going to stumble over top of him. Last card in our entire review here in blue. Prying Eyes, 4 generic mana, 2 blue, 6 total mana for an instant. Okay, draw 4 cards, discard 2. So you're drawing 4, you're discarding 2, you're probably discarding 2 lands. You have to play this late at 6 mana. Instant speed, I like that. I don't like leaving up 6 mana and passing. So it probably goes in like the top end of your Spellsy control deck. You really would only want 1 of these. That's a lot of mana. I mean, what if you tap more mana and you pick up 1 of these? I mean, it just allows you to... That's telling you what you're going to do on your next turn as well. Just kind of continue to dig. I think it's a 2.5. And with that, that is the rest of the set. Ravnica Allegiance. I'll say the lands, artifacts, not quite sure it's worth talking through those. There's maybe 1 or 2 that are okay. But I don't think you need a whole video on that. So this should probably close up the set. We'll see if I want to throw something else up there at a later time, but probably unnecessary. With that, we are going to be diving into drafts. Do it yourself on Magic Arena. Get out to your local game store and play. I hope you enjoy the limited set. I hope you enjoy the pre-release. I hope you enjoy drafting over the next few months of this set. And I hope you enjoyed this video. We'll talk to you next time, Planeswalkers. And s02.